So while I put the finishing touches on my upcoming video regarding my favorite song in each numbered Final Fantasy installment, I want to take a couple minutes just to go over and talk about my experience with the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo that I posted a full playthrough of a couple days ago. So I played through it 3 different times, once on each different combat setting, and for the most part I very much love the updated setting, but I do have a few minor gripes which I hope are fixed by launch. First out of the gate, the intro where the meteor crashes into the screen and the title card flashes right as the music reaches its peak, it gave me goosebumps. It took me so far back 20 years ago to the first time I saw that, and it was awesome. The updates to the music were pretty decent, though in a few places they seemed understated and almost faded into the background. And then there's little beats that worked, like the section where Cloud is placing the bomb down and the feather floats down. You get these little, did I even hear that, notes from One Wing Angel, and they were kind of haunting, and it works. It was one of those moments where I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty slick. Well, there are other pieces that are wildly different, and I can see how they're going to change the narrative, and I can't wait to see what happens. For instance, when Cloud puts down the bomb in the reactor, in this version of the game it does minimal damage. We cut to a scene where the president nods and they initiate a bunch of the machines in the reactor to go crazy and shoot up the place, which is what causes it to actually be destroyed, not the bomb that Avalanche put. It shows the twisted nature that Shinra will go to paint Avalanche as terrorists, which eventually causes them to bring down the plate on the slums, and who knows, maybe that's something they had planned all along and they were just looking for a window to take care of it. But for all the glamour and freshness, there are some issues. Graphically, it's pretty enough, though a few times things peek through that kind of shattered the veneer for me. Cloud's hair, for instance, it looks good from a distance, but anytime there's a close-up and there's an angle where you can see darkness behind, it gets really pixelated. They're not strands, it's almost like they're disintegrating into thin air, and it was kind of off-putting. And then later in the escape, there's a point where Barrett is doing his thing in the background and he's climbing up a ladder while you're climbing up yours, and his animation seems so disjointed. It looks almost like a claymation section of Pee-wee's Playhouse on Saturday morning. It seemed off, and I don't know what it was. And I know it's in the background and we're not supposed to take notice, but it was so jarring to me that every time I played through, I couldn't keep my eyes off it. I'm like, what in the hell is going on here? He looked janky, that's the only word I can think of. So the controls in the camera are all over the place. There's one point where I was climbing down a ladder and the camera was auto panning around, and once I got to the bottom of the ladder, when I pushed down, the camera would switch to an angle that it caused me to go back up the ladder, but at that same point, if I pushed up, I'd still go up the ladder. I had to manually move the camera to a point that when I pushed down, I dismounted from the ladder. And while that shouldn't be a big deal, that seems like a tiny little detail that they would have gotten through the AI process of the camera rotating, so that when you jump off the ladder, you're just getting off. You're not having to do something extra just to move along. And the camera issues tie heavily into combat, and it's everywhere. There were times where I wanted to look up at a cannon to have Barrett shoot, and the camera would pan down and get stuck in the floor, and I couldn't see anything, or half the screen was obscured. Same with the Scorpion boss. At points the camera would shift up when I was close to look down on him, but there was a walkway or a ceiling in the way and it would block out, or other times it would pan around to where the back of the wall and the doors are, and the camera would get stuck in the wall so I couldn't see back out. Those are little problematic things that a lot of games in the past have fixed, and you wouldn't think would be an issue so much in this generation. And even locking onto enemies, you would think that the camera would stay pointed at them, but I found times where I was running in a semicircle around that the camera would shift at a weird angle, taking the enemy kind of off to the side. And while maybe my attacks with Barrett were still hitting, it still fell off. It felt weird because he was kind of still aiming in this direction but shooting over that way. It was just weird. Which takes me to the combat. They could have done Final Fantasy XV combat. They could have done Kingdom Hearts 2 combat. Maybe not 3. Either way, they kind of tried for both and didn't really nail either, and it was a little bit disappointing. And at times when I'm switching between characters, you don't know where your AI is or which direction they're facing, so you have to remove your fingers from the thumbsticks, because as soon as you switch, it switches to them, so your thumbstick direction might change everything they're doing, and 9 times out of 10 you're facing the opposite direction of where you want to be facing. And I don't know if this is to the controls or the camera or a little bit of both, but It's just one of those things that's a little frustrating. And it's serviceable, but I don't know how it's going to hold up through 40 plus hours. And I've been reading some of the reviews of people who've gotten to play some of the combat with Tifa and Aerith a little bit further on, and they seem more frustrated than I was just doing the demo. And there's a fine line between challenging and frustrating. One is good and the other one isn't. The AI, I hope, will have some choices to tune the order of importance for their actions. And I didn't look in the demo, maybe it's there and I missed it. But leaving Cloud and Barrett to their own devices is trying to use a piece of window screen as a drinking straw. So I'm not trying to dump on this game. I'm not trying to say it's going to be crap. I am a huge Final Fantasy fan, and I am super optimistic that I'm going to enjoy this. And I'm going to play it all the way through, even if I have to deal with some of these frustrations. The main thing for me is seeing how this new narrative unfolds and the different things that are going to bring us to the same places that we're used to in the old game. I just hope that a few things are finessed before we receive the final product. All right, thank you, and I'll see you for my next video.